Hello and welcome to episode 7 of IT Help Desk Podcast, the podcast for women who are ready to break into tech, pivot their careers, or simply explore what IT has to offer. Today I decided to do an express episode, but before we start, I want to acknowledge our listeners. I created this podcast with the intention to encourage women to start their career in IT, which is a male-dominated field. However, I would like to acknowledge all our male listeners out there. My analytics came back and it was showing me that 50% of our listeners right now are male. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you know any female friends or relatives who may be interested in our topics, feel free to share this podcast with them. And I also want to give a shout out to our listeners from different countries, from Australia, Philippines, Vietnam, Canada, United States, Hungary, Panama, and United Kingdom. I'm sending you all my warmest hugs from the cold and cloudy Melbourne, and welcome all to my podcast. Thank you very much for your support. I'm still waiting for our friends from India, Nepal, Pakistan, and Ethiopia to find this podcast. My current team members are from these countries, all lovely people, so hopefully I get to see some listeners from these countries soon. And now, recently I interviewed a few applicants, and so I thought today we will talk about a topic that many of us face but rarely talk about, and that is job application rejections. When I first came to Australia and I was applying for jobs here in Melbourne, there's always this creeping anxiety whenever there is silence after an interview. And I knew back then that the next thing for me was to expect a rejection email. And that can really hurt and that can really lower your morale, especially if you know you're someone who's capable and has good work ethics and willingness to do their best for a role. So I thought I'd share this episode to help you persist in your job hunt. To give you an idea on the market competition right now in Melbourne, last month I posted a job vacancy in my team. So we were looking for one IT services analyst. And I posted it for 10 days, and within that 10 days, I received over 200 job applications. So it is important for you to understand before you send your application, you need to program your mind a little bit. Remember that you're applying for hundreds of job advertisements online for months or even years, depending on the market competition, before you even get a job that you deserve. And I say deserve because to me, basically, it's depending on the effort you put in your job searching, like how much time you spend in creating and reviewing your resume. How much time do you spend in practicing interview questions? How much effort do you put in your cover letter to make it convincing? If you put very little effort into these things, then I suppose it's fair you don't expect to get something so easily and so quickly. Like based on my personal experience, the less effort you put in, the more job rejections you'll get. Especially if you're an immigrant like me. When I first came to Australia, I struggled understanding the Australian accent at the time. So obviously I didn't do very well in my first few interviews. In fact, I didn't get a lot of interview invitations back then. My work experience was from one company overseas, and most hiring managers in Melbourne were looking for someone with local experience. But at the time, it was very frustrating because how will I even get a local experience when no one wanted to hire me, right? But for you, you don't stop there. I don't know what's happening with my voice. I'm starting to lose it. Maybe because it's very cold here in Melbourne. I'm just going to stop there and have a sip of water. There you go. Okay, so like I was saying, if you get rejections after rejections, you don't stop there. If you're someone who's moving from your home country to a place where there's a language barrier, you really need to put a lot of effort every single day in your application. You can start by reviewing your resume, the contents, and also the format. It has to be neat and properly formatted and professional looking. There's plenty of templates now available online, so make sure you choose the one that's easy to read and neat. Now, there will be so many job postings that offer good salary as well, and a lot of them that will fit your experience, or they may be locally available, meaning it's closer to your home. But for some reason, you just can't seem to get in any of them, and that's okay. You have to acknowledge that rejection is a normal part of the job hunting process. It's not a reflection of your worth or your abilities. In fact, even well experienced and successful professionals also face multiple rejections before landing their target role. So you just have to be patient during the application process and do not stop looking. But at the same time, you also do not stop improving yourself. It's very normal for this series of rejections to trigger different range of emotions in you. You'll feel disappointed, you will feel frustrated, and at times it really messes up your mindset. And for me, it instigated a lot of my self-doubt, and I struggled with this for quite a bit of time. So just to give you a backstory, the company I'm currently working for, it took me 2 years to get in here. I was so desperate to get into this company for many reasons. Number one was the stability of the organization, and number two was that it's closer to my home. When I was applying for a job here, my children were only 2 and 4 years of age. So I wanted to reach home as quickly as possible to see them at the end of the day. But the first 12 months I was applying to this company, they really didn't have an in-house IT help desk team. But because I really wanted to get into the company and I knew I had an IT support experience for healthcare, I tried applying for different roles. I was really desperate to get in, so I applied for a receptionist role. I applied for a medical billing role in finance. So for this one, I got shortlisted, but I messed up my interview big time at the time, so that was a lost opportunity there. I also applied for an admin role. Pretty much every job ad they published under administration, I tried in most of them. And so as a result, I received one rejection letter after the other. And I felt so down during that time. The rejections were just really killing my confidence. But I knew if I wanted to get in, I had to keep on going. So at the time, I was just really acknowledging the negative feeling of the rejections, but also at the same time, it prompted me to shift my focus back to my goal. And if you're listening to me right now, you need to ask yourself, what's your goal? And once you've identified that, you always need to keep your eyes on that goal. So for me, my ultimate goal at the time was to find a stable company locally so I can go home to my children as quickly as I can. And to make this long story short, after 2 years of trying at that same company, they finally formed their in-house IT help desk in 2017, which we call now service desk, and I got in as one of the pilot members, and now I'm the team lead of that team. So why am I telling you this? It's because I want you to take it as a good example. Instead of focusing on the hundreds of rejection letters you get, you need to see these rejections as your redirections. And I really like this mentality, and I am a living example of it. If you think about it, if I got accepted as a receptionist or as an admin person in the same company I'm in, I know I won't last in that role because I really wanted to be part of their IT team. I was just applying for these random roles to get my foot at the door, but deep inside, I wanted to get a job in IT. So you have to change your conversations with yourself. Take each rejection as an opportunity to look at your strategy. For example, maybe your cover letter needs to tell them a bit more about you. Maybe your resume isn't really explaining what you're capable of, or maybe it's the look of your cover letter and your resume. Do they both look professional? Have you checked for any grammatical errors or spelling mistakes? I've had applicants in the past who emailed me after they received their rejection letter and they ask for feedback. And so when they do that, I appreciate them asking because it means that they want to improve themselves. And so I try to give them honest and specific feedback rather than saying we found a better candidate. So as for you, you don't stop after your first 50 rejections. You don't stop after your 100 rejections. You need to keep a consistent job search routine and build up your momentum to help reduce the emotional impact of your previous rejections. So you will only stop when you get the role that you deserve. And like I said, you will only get this once you put in so much effort in everything related to your job hunting. But in saying that, You also need to break it up a little bit. You might get hundreds of rejections, and so for the first 20 or 50 rejections, for example, you can decide to stop applying for a day. Or the next day, you look online again and check what's available, but it doesn't necessarily mean you will apply, but you will just check what's out there. I'm sure everyone's aware by now that job postings usually have closing dates. So you don't really have to apply as soon as you see the ad. You can save it. You can come back to it after a day or two. As long as you check that it's still within the closing date, you can take a break 1 day, 2 days, 1 week. You decide on that one. But during this break period, feel all of your emotions. Be sad, be angry, be frustrated. But after that, get back into it. If you get an interview invitation, like I always say, then prepare for it. After the interview, when you get rejected, gracefully accept it but consider it as a progress. You got an interview, the hiring manager spent the time to talk to you in an interview, which means someone actually looked at your resume, considered it good enough for them to invite you to an interview. What does that mean? It means your resume is doing its job. It's getting attention. So when you get an interview invitation but didn't get the job offer, be thankful for the experience. That experience would have given you insights on what the interview questions were for this kind of role, the style of interview. For example, was it a one-on-one or was it a panel interview? But again, if you didn't get it, maybe you need to practice your answers a bit more. So learn how to accept these rejections and take the time to acknowledge your emotions every after rejection, but do not dwell on it for too long. Instead, improve something small every time. Remember these 4 R's, and I'll leave these 4 R's with you. And by the way, I made this all up, so you won't find this in any IT textbook. So here we go. Your first R is to review your resume. Your second R is to rehearse your interview answers. The third R is to rest after a certain number of rejections. And the last R is to repeat this process. So review your resume, rehearse your answers, and rest after a certain number of rejections, and then repeat. Okay? So these are all actionable items that will surely give you either improvement or results in your job search. Once you implemented these 4 R's for at least 6 to 12 months, you can come back to this podcast and share with us your experience. So I leave that with you. And if you're still getting rejections after rejections and still unable to secure a role, maybe it's time to get some additional help from a recruitment agency. And I will talk about this process more in my next episode. But remember, these rejections are not the end of your career or job search. The key is persistence and to never give up. If you're someone who really wants to get your foot into the IT world, keep applying, keep learning, and keep growing. I know you can do this, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm here to guide you, and if you have questions or topics you'd like me to cover, leave your comments below or send an email to ithelpdespodcast@gmail.com. Thank you again, everyone, for listening, and I'll catch you all next time. Bye-bye.